Good evening. This is James Exum, also known as Sakshi, once again coming to you from my living room in South Austin, Texas. I'm continuing tonight with my new series, an alphabetic series on yogic phrases and important yogic words. Tonight there will be a phrase. Normally there's been in this series so far, I think I've done 2 or 3 videos, just simply nouns, simply words. Also, as a sort of a special guest to my discourses, so to speak, I will be introducing to you to a new writer of yogic philosophy and legendary and historical, and some would say quite controversial during his lifetime. And this gentleman's name is Sri Aurobindo. And he was born in India in about August of 1872, and he passed away in December of 1950. Coincidentally, that was the year I was born. I was born September 30th. He passed away December 1950. And the reason he's a bit controversial is this reason. He was an Indian nationalist and a yogi. And I suppose you could call Gandhi an Indian nationalist and a yogi, if you wanted to go that far. I would, and I don't see any shame in being a nationalist. And the reason he was a nationalist, his choice of political subjects to pursue was India's independence from the oppressive British rule that had governed India from about, I believe it started about 1840 up until the time of their overthrow of the British Empire. Britain at that time was an imperialist nation, still is to a degree, in my opinion, and also was a master of colonization. And he didn't like it one iota, and had I been he and lived in that time, I probably would have been of the same mindset. He advocated for complete autonomy from British rule through his writings and political activities. And he did so to such a degree, he was actually arrested and imprisoned until he was acquitted. At that point, he withdrew to Pondicherry, which is a known city in India, to devote himself to spiritual practice. Enough of the jail cells, and enough of political intrigue, he decided to go a different route, a different path, a milder path, a safer path, I suppose you could call it that. He started pursuing his spiritual practice, and he was very successful at it. He wrote books and books and books and papers, and he became nationally and internationally known. His extensive literary output includes the treatise, The Life of the Divine, The Synthesis of Yoga, and the epic poem Savitri. He's also credited with inventing the concept of integral yoga, which means other religions can somehow, in a very passive way, integrate into the philosophy of yoga, and the philosophy of yoga, he was able to write and explain how they had certain major themes in common with other major religions in the world. Later on, my personal guru, internet guru, who was Sri Satchidananda, became known for his integral yoga programs. And I don't know if I heard it wrong or read it wrong, but I was under the impression that he was the one that came up with the concept of integral yoga. But obviously history has taught me something different here. And I'm not blaming anyone for anything, who came up with democracy. I'm sure democracy is an idea that's all over the world, even though we give it to the Greeks, generally and historically. So now to the title of this latest in my alphabetical series. It's going to be the Sanskrit phrase, Anityah Sarvasamkarah. Now that's a mouthful, if I've ever said one. Anityah, Anityah, and then Sarvasamkarah, Sarvasamkarah. Now you see why when I started this series, I said there will be words and phrases. Well, this is one of the phrases. And it simply means all compounded things are impermanent, which is a foundational insight into the Indian spiritual traditions. When considered through the lens of Sri Aurobindo's teachings, this concept takes on a dynamic and evolutionary significance. Sri Aurobindo acknowledged the impermanence inherent in all constructions of the material and mental world. Yet he saw this flux not as a cause for nihilism, but as an invitation to discover the deepening, enduring reality behind all appearances. Well, I have to agree with that 100%. In fact, I found a new guru here in him, and now I will go online for PDFs that are available to download to my computer and study his works. He's I've heard the name here and there, but I have never stopped to investigate his life, his contributions, his courage, and now I will be going into the reading and learning and dissecting and comparing, as I always do. I'm a comparative person. I compare different religions, different philosophies, and I will incorporate the tenets of his work that I agree with wholeheartedly, and maybe occasionally write a paper on something that I see, not disagree with, but see in a different light than he saw. So far, Shankara has been my go-to for my narrative quotations and my narrative comparisons. But now I have a new partner, so to speak, in my writing for you and for the world and for my work in my older age. And I'm excited. I'm always excited to discover a luminous mind that may not be 100% in agreement with my philosophy of yoga, but I like challenges also. It's sort of like putting the sword against the whetstone, the razor against the hard stone. You sharpen your edge by a little comparative intercourse, so to speak, a little comparative argument, but lighthearted and nothing personal, no thin skin or reactionary results should come from my reading up on his work and learning deeply from what he had to teach. And from what I've read, he was a major teacher, a major writer. So he's a fellow philosopher of Indian yogic philosophy, as yours truly has been for a long time and hopes to be for a while. So more so, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy offers a transformative approach to the workings of the mind. Well, I tried that also. I tried to put these things out, particularly in relationship to negative thoughts and limiting patterns. Well, if you go back and review the video that I created yesterday or the day before, which directly precedes this, in my chronological list of videos on my YouTube channel, you will see that I broached this subject yesterday, and now coincidentally, I didn't have foresight, but coincidentally, the synchronicity is there, is what I'm trying to say. It sort of falls into place. He taught that the human mind, though often clouded by habitual negativity and ignorance, is not a fixed entity. Rather, it is inherently capable of evolution and self-transcendence. Well, again, these are words I have taught, but I've also read them from maybe the same sources he read them. Shankara, the history of Yogic philosophy, the Vedanta studies, the Upanishads, the Gita, the Mahabharata, this whole library of illuminated teachings, not sacred, but illuminated teachings, have been at my disposal for about the last 50 years, and I've absorbed a lot of them, and I repeat a lot of them when I speak and write. And obviously he tapped into the same well of wisdom. So we seem to be brothers, so to speak, from different mothers, not to mention different generations. He would have been more my father's generation, much more my father's generation. The mind's tendency, he writes, to generate negative thoughts stems from its fragmentation. Well, the consciousness of the cosmos has a much broader bandwidth and ability. And when you take a spark of the consciousness of the cosmos and you make it fit somehow mystically, or I won't say magically, but spiritually into the corpus of we humble human beings, that consciousness, even though it's a spark of the divine, the cosmic, doesn't have the capabilities of the major entity. It's limited because the lens focus has narrowed. It can't be as broad and wide and all-encompassing. It is within a new boundary, within a new corpus, within a new limited field. And that's why humans, even though we have consciousness and we have flashes of the cosmic wisdom, we're not entirely capable of accessing the entirety of the cosmic wisdom at any given time. We have a smaller shell with which we exist, and this limits our abilities. This is why I often say humans are not godlike. We have a spark of God in us, but we're limited because of the limitations of not only our physical bodies, but our mental capabilities also encased within the body also. So this fragmentation that he speaks of, the mind's tendency to generate negative thoughts, stems from its fragmentation. We're just a fragmented universe. We're not God, we're not the creator. So we have our limitations. This is why when I say to you sometimes I can't explain to you how, when the voice comes to me in my deepest meditation, I can't explain to you how that connection happens and the transition and the back and forth communication happens, because I'm only a human. There's certain words humans are limited. There's certain vocabulary, no pun intended, that humans are limited to. So therefore they cannot explain cosmic happenings to other limited-minded humans. They can only hint at it or do their best with the vocabulary and the ability they have to speak on the subject. They're limited. So that fragmentation and its habit of perceiving reality through the lens of separation and limitation, that's what breeds fear, doubt, and suffering for we mere humans. Because we have a fragmented concept of all the entirety of cosmic reality. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. So when you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and you're on the puzzle table and you've been at it for a while, and there's 1,000 pieces, and you're starting to see the edges and maybe the clouds and how a tree may fit there, and a balloon floating around may fit over here in the puzzle. If you're any bit at all insecure, you will become a little anxious about, well, will I be able to solve this thing? And there's so many pieces that look alike and have the same colors and similar patterns. So you become a little doubtful, and that leads to a form of suffering, and that leads to a form of, if you're super sensitive, that would lead to a form of fear that this might be beyond my abilities. But that's how life is. Sometimes we think we've got it all together, and then a problem pops up from nowhere, and all of a sudden we go, well, I've never experienced this before. Can I handle this? Well, with time and effort and knowledge and the neti-neti principle, not this, not that, you'll finally get down to the pieces falling together, and the whole image will come into focus for you. You will come to what we yogis call a realization. And if it's on a cosmic level, so to speak, or reduces the cosmic level to the human mind's comprehension, then you could call that enlightenment. You become enlightened on that particular subject. However, Sri Aurobindo posited that the mind is a field of consciousness that can be progressively refined and uplifted. So there's hope. There's hope. Never give up hope. Through practices of self-awareness, meditation, and aspiration to align with higher consciousness, this is what I'm saying, we're lower consciousness, even though we think we may have higher consciousness. In comparison to the cosmos and to the Creator, we're lower consciousness, I assure you. Individuals can observe their negative thoughts without attachment and gradually dissolve the influence of that negativity. This process is not merely a suppression of negativity, but a genuine transformation. Isn't that a wonderful concept he's written about? Wherein the mind becomes receptive to the light and harmony of what he coined and called the Supermind. There's another phrase that's very similar to that. Supramind, the Supramind. That the Superman was part of the writings of a German philosopher, Nietzsche. You've heard of that, Man and Superman. So maybe he borrowed this from him, or maybe it was a popular concept. They were, I think, in the same time frame, generation-wise, or close. Maybe that was just a popular thought running around in Central Europe and over in India and parts nearby in that part of the world at that time in history. Maybe it was just a concept that was floating around. Who knows? So the Supermind is a plane of truth and unity that transcends duality. In other words, it falls right smack in the middle of what we also call the Advaita philosophy, Vedanta Advaita, Vedanta. Thus, in reference to negative thoughts, Sri Aurobindo's vision is deeply optimistic. I said there's hope. The mind can change, grow, and embody higher truth. Well, hopefully. If not, I would be out here tomorrow. I mean, why would I want to hang around if I wasn't day to day improving and my mind and my intellect and my knowledge base and my ability to deal with the world in a peaceful and mindful and joyful way, blissful. Why would I, if I did not think I could exist in a form of bliss almost on a daily basis, why would I want to be here? I mean, I know it's our duty to be here, but, it kind of takes the fun out of the game. If you can, at least laugh a few times a day. And I try my best to laugh as often as I can during the day because I see the ridiculousness of other human beings. And they're not ridiculous because they're clown-like or because they're trying to be funny. it's just they're ridiculous in how they deal with life on a day-to-day basis. They're so ignorant, which simply means they don't know, not ignorant like stupid or dumb. They're so ignorant, they ignore the facts, the possibilities, the experience factor that can teach you to enjoy life on a daily basis. They're ignorant of that. I try to not be that way. And so his vision is deeply optimistic. The mind can change, grow, and embody higher truth, leading, there's a point to all of this, which leads to liberation from suffering and the flowering of spiritual potential. Well, if you're a yogi and you study yoga philosophy, you are looking for the cultivation of the flowers, and then through the cultivation and the feeding and the watering and the protection and the empathy and the caring and the love, and that leads hopefully to spiritual potential for your personal development at a much faster and higher rate. So we want to, he had this concept of exploring impermanence and transformation, and I've done that also through my comparative studies, but I'm new to him, so this is a new concept, and I just wrote this discourse today, so I'm not really 100% comfortable with his philosophy. I'm learning it as I go, and I'm learning that I wrote about it from what I read, borrowed, read, tried to make sense of, put it in a cognitive form to present as a narrative to you this evening. And because I did that, and I'm reading this maybe for the second time after the finishing of this discourse, this paper, I'm not 100% in tune with his concepts yet, but I'm trying to get there, and I'm trying to make sense of it for you through my commentary. So according to Sri Aurobindo, the universe is not a static creation, but a manifestation of infinite consciousness. In other words, it's not just a fish laying on the beach, kind of gasping with this little whatever those things are, for breath. It's alive. It's expanding and contracting and commingling and blending and unblending, and there's birth and preservation and death going on, and it's just like any other thing that lives. I truly believe the universe is alive. I think it's a living organism, so to speak, a gigantic organism. It's not some little amoeba. Maybe it's just the ultimate amoeba. Who knows? Nobody can really disprove that. I'm not saying it is, but it's an idea. I think it's just as good as string theory. String theory. So the impermanence of forms, which are a result of this non-static creation, after they become manifested out of the infinite consciousness, he termed the supermind, which expresses itself through evolution. The impermanence of forms, or samkaras, that's the second part of the title of this work tonight, is a necessary aspect of the ongoing process, for it allows for transformation and growth. The transience of all things, rather than being a source of sorrow, becomes a vehicle for the soul's progressive realization of the divine nature of the universe, of Brahman, of the cosmos, of our individual lives even. What's above is like below, what's below is like above. Thus, while the surface forms dissolve, the underlying spirit persists and ascends toward greater perfection. I'll let you think about that one. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to answer all of my presentation to you. Sometimes you need to rewind and hear what I said and think it through. You can't be a yogi philosopher unless you learn to work through these metaphorical and sometimes deep concepts that are presented through the writings of yoga philosophy, in the writings of yoga philosophy. Okay, so this ongoing process, as I said, allows for transformation and growth. The transience of all things, rather than being a source of sorrow, becomes a vehicle for the soul's progressive realization of the divine nature. Thus, while the surface form dissolves, I will repeat it for you, the underlying spirit persists and ascends towards greater perfection. In his magnum opus, The Life Divine, and I haven't read that yet, but I will, and you should if you want to, Sri Aurobindo writes that the world is a movement of consciousness. Well, I'll go further than that. The universe is a movement of consciousness. Your soul is moving consciousness. It moves to witness, it moves to understand, it moves to persist. And then there's the dissolution of forms, which is the part of the journey toward a truer, more complex expression of the divine, of the Creator. So this word, this phrase we're discussing in general here and in depth sometimes. It all depends on how I want to get into it and how much commentary and how much personal data I can produce to support this discourse. Anityah Sarvasamkarah, which is the whole name, I spelled it earlier, then is not merely a statement of loss, but a call to embrace the evolutionary adventure of existence. What a wonderful phrase. I'm not tooting my horn, it's pretty darn good. It's a call to embrace the evolutionary adventure of existence. So by recognizing impermanence, we are urged to seek that which is eternal. Well, that's the principle of neti. If you want to clean out your mind and your brain and your body, reject those things, negate those things which aren't important, and keep the good stuff that supports the health and evolution of the mind and body and spirit. So we're seeking our own spiritual essence and to participate consciously in the transformation of life, consciously participate in the transformation of life, matter, and the mind towards the supra-mental truth. The supramental, not just a mental truth, but the super truth, using the supermind. In summary, so we're getting ready to close here, folks, and I'm sure you're ready. In summary, Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of impermanence is far from pessimistic. He invites us to see change as the creative play of the divine. The other name for that creative play of the divine is called the play of Lila. And if you go back and look through my videos, the earlier ones, I think this will be 84, 85, you will find the play of Lila as one of my videos. It will be the subject matter of that particular video. And this play of the divine encourages us to transcend attachments to fleeting forms and awaken to the immortal reality within us. Don't concern yourself with ne'er-do-well activities and fads, as I said in my last video, and the latest craze of the day, and who's popular on the musical stage, and who's popular as a producer or a director in Hollywood. Those things come and go. I'm old enough that I can't remember some of the names of the great producers and writers and musicians of my childhood. They were great in their day, but they're just footnotes now. So once you awaken to this immortal reality within, you have found a way that Anityah Sarvasamkarah becomes the gateway to spiritual progress. And hopefully, and surely, with a proper degree of faith and determination, it will help with the fulfillment of your and their and even my human potential. And there it is. I'll leave it there. And I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a little deep and it was a little, it didn't quite flow like most of my talks do, my narrations do. But again, it's a brand new subject. And I've discovered this remarkable yogi, born during my father's generation and died the year I was born. I was excited about it. And again, I haven't read enough of his work yet to really get into the nuts and bolts and concepts and definitions and see the potentiality of my interconnections with his personal philosophy and how his philosophy will help me evolve out my philosophy, which I can present to you to upgrade your philosophy and your personal yoga growth as a yogin, as an aspirant student of yoga, the philosophy of yoga, which basically is just the philosophy of life. Remember, yoga is a science. It's not a religion. And if you want to become a good student of this subject, of this science, you have to put in a lot of work. You have to do your research like I've done. Here I'm 75 years old and I'm researching a whole new area of yoga philosophy that somehow through all the years I've just missed. But then again, in one of my earlier videos, and this is true, I said that the vastness of the books on the subject of yoga and the essays and the papers and the philosophy and the theories and the reference material is, you can spend a lifetime and never get bored. And you can see there's more of a smile on my face today than there was yesterday and the day before, because I found a whole new field from which I can mine golden nuggets of yogic wisdom. So there it is. I'm going to go ahead and close now if you don't mind. And I enjoyed this. I hope you did. If you didn't, that's okay too. And I hope your life's a little better today than it was yesterday, and I hope it'll be much better tomorrow than the preceding, and so forth and so on. So be good to yourself, be good to others, and be good to strangers. And remember, if there's a problem, compare it to something that's positive. I guarantee you don't have more problems in your life than you have positive things that are happening if you just stop and survey, in general, the realm of your life. There's a lot of positive things out there. And if there's something negative going on, like I said yesterday, this too shall pass. So here we are. Enjoyed it. Hope you did. Want to share it with others, that's fine, but I'm not looking for subscribers. I'm not looking for donations. I'm just looking to empty this reservoir of knowledge to those that are worthy of receiving it. And how do I determine who's worthy? I don't. You are the ones that are worthy to come back again and again and struggle with what I'm teaching and investigate it at a deep level and do your homework, do your research, and try to fine-tune your heart and your mind into accepting this wonderful yogic philosophy. So good night to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.